So, welcome to our inaugural um, EMDR intensive podcast. Our first guest is the illustrious Dr. Ricky Greenwald. He's the founder and executive director of the Trauma Institute and Child Trauma Institute, previous faculty of Mount Sinai School of Medicine and SUNY University at Buffalo School of Social Work, and a fellow of the American Psychological Association. Dr. Greenwald is the author of numerous professional articles, as well as several books, including EMDR and Child and Adolescent Psychotherapy, the Child Trauma Handbook, EMDR Within a Phase Model of Trauma-Informed Treatment, Treating Problem Behaviors, and Progressive Counting. Dr. Greenwald is a pioneer and a leading authority on PC, EMDR, Flash, and intensive trauma-focused psychotherapy. He's also a pretty good little guy. So welcome to our podcast, Ricky. Thank you for being our first guest.
Sure. Thanks for asking me. Cool to be first.
Yes, it is. It is. And also kind of goes right with the theme that you just got done doing another week-long training for intensives.
Yep. Just finished at lunchtime.
So have a fresh batch coming up.
Right.
That's great. Some of the questions are around intensives can often be, what is an intensive? How do you define one?
Well, it's really just doing a lot of therapy at a time rather than the conventional 15-minute hour per week model. So, for example, E.C. Hurley used to do intensive programs with veterans, and that was 90 minutes in the morning and 90 minutes in the afternoon each day for a few days. We go for 6 hours a day, not 3. So we go 9 to 4 with an hour break for lunch. Some people do a 4-day program or whatever, and ours is more open-ended. We do a more detailed intake interview and figure out how many days we think somebody's going to need, and we try to schedule the intensive for them. So it could be 3 days, it could be 2 weeks, whatever. Yeah. And others do it differently. Some people just do like one full day and see how far you get and schedule another day. It all counts.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do too with how much the client can tolerate and how much the therapist is comfortable with.
I don't think so, actually. I think it's more about how a therapist organizes their practice. Because I've found that most clients, I mean, not everybody, but most clients really can do multiple days in a row.
Yeah. I like it. How did it go for you the first few times that you did that?
Well, thinking back, probably about 20-something years ago now, maybe longer, 25 years ago, I did a full day with somebody. We probably spent 7 hours helping her recover from the suicide of a close friend. And it was fun. I mean, you just dig in and you plow through, and she comes out and she's okay. It was really cool. I think that was the first time I did that. Then there was another time that there was some work I wanted to get done, and a colleague who was also a friend also had some work she wanted to get done. And so we spent a weekend together treating each other, basically. And that was good. So I sort of had some preliminaries, and then at one point, I'd had a house built on the edge of the woods. So there's trails out the backyard, and there was a spare apartment up top. And at the same time, I was on the road, probably 3 weeks out of 4, just teaching. And so you're really not supposed to teach it and not be doing it anymore. It doesn't work well. So like, I couldn't tell somebody, I'll see you next Tuesday at 10. I'm going to be in Ohio next Tuesday, or somewhere. So I started doing intensives as a convenience. because it was like a way I could keep on practicing, and somebody come for a few days and they'd stay in the upstairs apartment.
Nice.
And it went really well. It went really well. And so I started doing it really as a convenience, as a sort of logistical solution for my own schedule. But I came to actually prefer intensives as, in many cases, the best way to get the job done.
What what led you to believe that? Was it just time, or was it something that you saw
Okay.
in the
Well, for one
experience of
thing,
it?
it's my personal temperament. Like, if you get me started on anything and I'll do it for hours. I just get into stuff. So it suits me, and it doesn't suit everybody, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But um, you know, so somebody came to me, um, I mean, getting the job done quickly is huge. I've helped people save their marriages. I've helped people stay out of jail, because when you can go back to your spouse that you cheated on or that you were disrespectful to or whatever, and say, hey, not only do I recognize what I did wrong and I'm going to take responsibility for it, but here's what I've already done to become the kind of person that won't do that again.
Nice.
Whether you're going to your spouse or to the judge or whatever. Um, I've worked with people that didn't have to go into residential treatment. I've worked with people that could cut very short the leave they were forced to take from their jobs. So getting it done fast is huge. And if you ask 100 people who are sufficiently troubled that they feel that they need therapy, would you rather get the benefits of therapy in a week or a year? 99 or 100 of them will say a week would be great,
Right?
right? And so you can do that with an intensive. Sometimes it is a matter of saving a marriage or staying out of jail or not losing your job or not having to lose your semester of college or whatever it is. But even when it's not that high stakes, I mean, why not? Why not get to your next level and start operating at that where the way you want to be?
Why suffer longer?
Right, right. So
Where
that
did
was
we?
that was the beginning. And then as I got into the research and as we did our own research, I learned about additional advantages. One is you get very low dropout rates. Um, we're at around 5% or lower, which is very low for psychotherapy. Because by the time people sort of block out the time and they say, okay, I'm going for this marathon thing, they really usually do it. Dropouts are typically a result of inadequate screening more than anything else. Whereas in hour per week psychotherapy, you get dropouts for all kinds of other reasons too. Um, your client's spouse gets a job in Florida and they move. Boom, they're gone, right? Um, they the behaviors they're struggling with lead them to the hospital or to jail. Or another thing that happens is you do some work, they get a little more stabilized, and they say, I'm good now. I don't need this anymore. Thank you so much. You really helped me, even though you haven't gotten to do the big stuff yet. But there's no fires right now, right? There's so many reasons that people drop out of therapy in the hour per week. And those reasons are mostly wiped out in intensives. So you get the higher completion rate. And I think of it like, the third day of penicillin.
Mm.
A lot of people in hour per week therapy drop out on the third day of penicillin when their symptoms aren't right in their face anymore.
Right?
Whereas with intensives, you have a better chance of really going through the whole course of therapy and getting the more profound and lasting change. So that's another thing. And another thing is efficiency. I think that you're cutting down the total number of treatment hours required to get to the same outcome. Here's why. couple of things. In hour per week therapy or 50-minute hour per week therapy or whatever, a quarter to a third of every session is spent on hello and goodbye. And that's not wrong. You have to do that, right? You check in with your client, you see how they've been doing with what you've been working on. If there's anything pressing that you got to deal with.
Yeah.
If there is, that might take the whole session, right? But even if there's not, so then you got sort of the middle of the session where you sort of do whatever the next step in your treatment is. And then you need to spend the last 5 or 10 minutes putting the client back together, helping them regain composure, getting ready for whatever's next. So that takes a lot of time. Another thing that might take a lot of time, depending on your client, is stabilization and coping skills. That's an essential part of therapy because you don't want your client to further deteriorate while they're waiting to get their healing done. Even if you are mainly doing EMDR and that's your main event, but it can take a while to get the EMDR done. And so you might really have to invest in stabilization and coping skills so that they can hang on while they're waiting for the EMDR to kick in, which could take months, right?
Right.
With intensives, you're getting to the trauma healing so quickly. And you know what the best stabilization intervention is? Not being traumatized anymore.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So with some clients, you still have to do some coping strategies as you're sending them back to their life. Some people do need that, but it's going to be way less than what they would have needed before they healed from their trauma. So, with intensives, you not only get quick results, which would be enough by itself, you also get lower dropout rate. You get fewer total treatment hours for the same result. And then there's a couple more things I want to mention. You
Please
asked me
do.
why it's so great.
Absolutely. Go for it.
There's a lot of reasons it's so great. One is if there's a certain person you want to work with. Like if I want to work with somebody in Rochester, New York, and I'm in Western Massachusetts, I'm not going to drive 5 hours each way to see my therapist for an hour a week. But you know what? I got something that's messing me up. I will drive out to Rochester and spend a couple days with that therapist and I'll clean it up. And that's what I do. My therapist is in Rochester, and so intensives give you the option of working with somebody that you really want to work with that may not be in your own location. Another issue, and everything I've said so far is true. The next thing I'm saying, I think is true, but I don't know. I like to be clear on sort of what we know from the data and what's just my idea or clinical impression. I think, and this has to be tested, that you reduce the risk of destabilizing the client by doing intensives. And this is a little dicey because you actually increase the risk. When somebody does hours and hours and hours of trauma healing within a few days, you will occasionally see what we call passing storms, where in the days afterwards, sometimes the client feels even worse than before for a little while, for a couple of hours, a couple of days, whatever. But it blows over. Whereas in conventional hour per week therapy, you get that risk every time you're doing trauma work, and that could go on for weeks or months. So with intensives, you have a heightened risk for a very brief period where you can really be on top of it and monitor it. Mm-hmm. And then you're eliminating the long-term risk of sessions over and over again over weeks or months. And yeah, there's one more thing. So we get a lot of referrals from EMDR therapists. Mm-hmm. who maybe aren't set up to do intensives. And a lot of people, they understand about trauma, they want to get the healing done, but their client has so many pressing issues that you'd never get past first base, right?
Mhm.
You're always so so I got a client who has been working with this therapist she loves, 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 has been working with her for half a year, is going to continue working with her after she's with me. On the second or third day of therapy, she tells me something. I don't know, I don't remember what it was, but kind of important. And she said, I never told anybody that before, not even my therapist. And I said, well, I'm glad you told me, but why tell me and not your therapist?
Mhm.
She said, well, I'm never going to see you again. I don't care what you think of me. I don't want my therapist to have a bad opinion.
That's a beautiful one. Mhm.
Yeah. And so you get the stranger on a train effect
Yeah.
of kind of like, you can say anything here. You can just go for it because it's like this safe, it's like what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, and so I think many clients experience the sort of freedom to just go for it. And that's not accidental. We have a very systematic approach where we
Right.
are building the relationship in ways that
Mhm.
make that possible, right? It's
Right.
not, they don't just jump in and say, oh, hey, you're a stranger and I'm going to tell you, we
Right.
earn it, but we
It's an
can earn it quickly.
intentional.
Yeah, we can earn it quickly in a systematic way. And clients do experience that freedom to just go for it. So yeah, that's a long answer to a short question. I think intensives are great. And
I
those
love
are
the long
many
answer.
of the
I
reasons.
I
Yeah.
also love your metaphor about taking your car in to get it fixed. Would you share that one?
Oh, sure. This is how I open my trainings. I say you take your car in and the mechanic tells you, you're driving around on bald tires. That's really not a good idea. Tell you what, you bring your car in once a week. Every week I'll change a tire. And after a while, you'll have good tires. You'll be good. And so, you know, you wouldn't go to that mechanic, right? You'd be
Right.
like, come on, just change my tires so I can drive a safe car. And so that's the transformation going on in our field right now, where we've been changing one tire a week with our clients. We've been telling our clients, hey, I'm glad you came to therapy because there's this stuff that really needs working on. And right now, you're not safe or you're not managing your relationships effectively or whatever it is, right? So tell you what, you come in for 50 minutes once a week, and in 6 months or a year, you'll be good, right? And there are reasons that we've said that. There's an entire, decades and decades of how practices get built where that made sense. But now that we have methods that facilitate memory reconsolidation, which is the neuropsych term for what we might call trauma healing, where the memory really gets healed in a profound, permanent way. It gets moved from that special room in the brain where it's kind of stuck, and it gets processed and integrated and moved into long-term memory where it's something we've grown from and got stronger from instead of something that's hurt us. Now that we have methods like EMDR that can do this, there's nothing, the brain doesn't have a rule that says you can only do that for 45 minutes a week. That's not
And
how the
it's going to
brain
take
operates.
you a couple years.
Right, right. And so the advent of methods like EMDR enables us to be more like the car mechanics in a good way, which is, oh, you got a problem. Let's take care of it. Let's get the job done. Which, I mean, there's always going to be a role for hour per week therapy, many roles. But I think for many people and many presenting problems, intensives are better, right? You get the job done faster, reduced dropout, reduced total treatment hours, reduced risk of instability, I think, right? So, yeah, I think it's actually it's evolving to become a standard of care.
And I know that you've done the research and you keep collecting your data, and I know you're interested in having insurance get to the point where they'll
Mhm,
cover that.
mhm.
But what do you think that looks like?
Well, I mean, the nice thing now is we're not really hassling with insurance companies. So that's like a breath of fresh air, but that's not sufficient because right now people can only get an intensive if they have the cash or if they're lucky enough to get into one of, a grant funded programs. And we do a couple of those too. We treat victims of crime in Western Massachusetts. We treat high school students and their families in Wilmington, North Carolina, because we've been able to, somebody's paying for that. There's funding,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, Looks like we're going to be doing a project in Rochester with court involved people to
Nice.
reduce the recidivism rate, Rochester, New York. Um, so, free therapy is great. And if you have the cash to pay for it, that's great. But we really need to get the insurance companies on board so that regular people um, can just access this as a normal way of getting treatment. And so, we've done some research and a lot of other people are doing research too. I mean, Adjio in the Netherlands has a pretty big operation going there and he's cranking out the studies. And then there's various people in the United States and other countries working with military population and other populations. So it is a moment in history where, I mean, moment in history. Okay, so when I started doing these as a regular thing, there was Katie O'Shea and Sandra Paulson and me. Maybe E.C. Hurley was doing it too. Um, I started giving workshops at the EMDR conferences about 8 or 9 years ago. Just 1.5 hour sort of orient to what it's about. And there'd be two, three, 400 people in the room, and the room was like on fire, and everybody's asking questions. And my institute, we built up quite a bit. We have, I don't even know, 15 or 20 therapists now, and that's all we do is intensives. I mean, we do training and stuff too and research, but in terms of the therapy, we just do intensives. So we got pretty big, and until just a couple years ago, we were the go-to. And I still think we're really great and we have a research supported model and all that stuff. I love what we do. But so at the last EMDR conference, there was a breakfast meeting that somebody organized to talk about intensives. And I got there late and there were like 50 people around the table and they were all talking. Nobody even knew who I was. It was really cool.
That can be really nice for you, I know.
It was really cool. I got an email today, just today, an hour ago, saying, hey, you want to learn how to do intensives? We have a 2.5 hour workshop. Here it is. It's got MDRCEs. There's like 6 or 8 different people teaching how to do it now. Um, and there are hundreds of people offering intensives. So I was kind of like the Johnny Appleseed, kind of telling everybody about it, and it's really taken off. And
Absolutely.
and so, where does that leave me doing the next thing? And so, we're trying to get projects with insurance companies and you know, trying to I'm thrilled that it's available to people with money now. It really is. I mean, you go and search for EMDR intensives online and you'll get 100
Get it.
hits for people who are offering it. And there's a lot of talent out there. Um, and so, my role and my institute's role is not simply to be a competitor in the market, but really to do the next step. And so we're doing things like developing projects and getting outcomes that can be published so that the insurance companies will eventually get on board. Um, we're also developing a certification because actually, I'm thrilled that people are offering 2.5 hour trainings or 1 day trainings or whatever, but we're offering a really thorough training and supervision as people are doing it. So anyway, we've got a certification so that if somebody's trying to find, hey, this is somebody who's really learned what there is to learn and they're really serious and they got supervision and blah, blah, blah. It's one way to identify. And not that I believe that only certified people are doing a good job. I know it's not like that. I know there's a lot of people out there doing great work. But I think that, as it gets even bigger and as insurance companies are figuring out how do we know who's for real or that kind of thing, I think the certification is going to make sense. So as intensives become more popular among therapists and among prospective clients, we're just trying to do the next step. What's the next step? Um, I'll be putting a book out pretty soon. This is how to do intensives, not how to do EMDR intensives, but how to do it our way, our research supported model, which is, features EMDR. It does.
That's right.
And Flash and progressive counting. But also, when people come to an intensive, they really want to get their healing done. And so we have a very systematic, concise, efficient way of going boom, 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 and getting them ready really quickly. So you're still thorough, but you're not frittering time away. And so, that's what I'm working on now is the project, the outcome data, the certification, the book, and just trying to help people get really efficient and really good at doing intensives.
I appreciate how giving you are with your knowledge and how much you've shared. Because when I started looking into doing intensives, the people I talked to about it thought I was a little crazy. And I finally found one who said, there's this guy. I heard him at EMDR. Why don't
Right.
you reach out to him?
Right.
I actually had somebody say, I think you need to talk to your licensing board and make sure that's okay and that you won't get in trouble doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were such a light in the darkness for me,
Right.
and have helped me so much in learning so much about it. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And the boom of intensives has just been phenomenal. And I really believe you've been a driver for that.
Yeah.
And so thank you for that.
Well, it's back in the old days when I was presenting, there were a lot of questions. Like, you can be right before it's cool, you know?
Yeah,
and and it's like people would say things like, my clients get exhausted after one EMDR session. How are you going to get them to do that all day? Right. And you can't do that with children. Wouldn't that destabilize them? And there's nothing wrong with those questions. They're really natural questions based on people's existing experience.
right.
And so, yeah, is that legal? And,
Are
um,
you crazy? Right. And
what about somebody? You wouldn't do that with somebody with complex PTSD, would you? Wouldn't that destabilize, right? And well, yeah, most of our clients have complex PTSD, you know. Um, so there were really legitimate questions, but people were kind of confused and scared.
mhm,
And by now, it's like this is just cool and everybody wants it. Clients always wanted it. Any client who hears about this, they're like, wow, that's how I want to do it.
yeah.
Because it's so appealing. You get it over with, you get to the other side and you live your life, right? But among the professional community, there was a process of,
Mhm,
same thing with EMDR, right? At first, it was
yeah.
this radical thing that got people upset, and now it's become the established treatment of choice.
And I think so much of it is that people don't know it's available. They don't know you can do this
Right,
because they're
right,
used to that hour a week paradigm of that's how you do it.
right,
And I kind of think of, the old commercial about this is not your father's Oldsmobile.
right, right,
This isn't your grandpa's therapy either.
right.
And it's changed, and the concept that you can heal quickly seems so alien.
Hmm.
And but welcome also,
Yeah,
like, wow, really, you can do that, which
right.
I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I do want to mention the role of Flash in our intensives. Now, I talk with Phil and Lewis about Flash. And when they do Flash, it works every time beautifully. And they have some tricky clients too. They're not just
Yeah.
working with easy people. So they're magic. I'm not magic. Um, and I'm not doubting them. I believe them. I know
Yeah.
them. They're honest. Um, in our shop, our therapists are really good. We are. And we
Yeah.
work in chronological order. So we're not, the normal way people, spin their wheels or get looping is because there's unprocessed memories underneath. We don't have that. Even so, about 1 out of 3 or 4 of our clients, there's no special reason to do Flash because it's not doing anything for them that EMDR is not doing, right? It's not any faster. But for many of our clients, Flash not only speeds things up, but it lightens things up, right? It's less emotionally intense. And so, in terms of getting people through a day, if you're flashing through a lot of the memories, it still work, but it's not quite as intense. It's not quite as draining. Now, we were doing intensives just fine even before Flash was developed, and
Mm.
we've been around for a while. Um, but I think Flash has made it a little better.
How do you find clients receive Flash? How do they take it?
It varies. Um, some people will have a success experience and then dismiss the experience because it's like, well, nothing actually happened. So, you know, it doesn't bother me now, but tomorrow it'll be back. Right. And so,
And then it's not.
right there, you have to say, well, usually it works, but, we'll check in tomorrow. We'll see.
Mhm.
Um, Others are just like really happy that there's this weird thing that seems to work so well and so quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Flash, so that's something you brought in now. But is there anything you noticed that you've done differently about how you did them at first and how you do them now?
Um, so in other words, how have we refined our implementation of intensives?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm going to answer a slightly different question and then I'll get to that one. Um, so I'm not only a longtime expert in EMDR, I'm also the developer of progressive counting, which early research indicated might be faster than EMDR and might be even better tolerated, less emotionally intense. So we did a randomized comparison of intensive EMDR to intensive PC in our victims of crime program. And we found out a couple of interesting things. One is both worked great. And whatever treatment the client got, they almost always said to their therapist, I'm really glad I got this treatment. Um, there were 3 people out of about 45 where PC just wasn't happening. We switched them to EMDR. There were 3 people in the EMDR group out of 45 where EMDR just wasn't happening. We switched them to PC. So, we put some years into checking this out. Is there one that's better than the other? And, which is why I thought of it now as you're asking how we
Mhm.
evolved our practice. And what we learned is they're both great. By the way, they were both equally efficient. When you do single incident comparisons, PC is faster. But when you do comprehensive trauma therapy, working your way through their list of the worst things that happened, all that free association that happens in EMDR, which makes it slower than PC. Well, you're getting a lot of advanced work done on the later memories that way. And so as you go through the later memories, it catches up. And so the efficiency was even in this one.
Mhm.
Um, so there was no efficiency advantage for either method. There was no dropout advantage for either method. The dropout rates were very low for both. Both equally as effective. And so really what we learned from that study is these are both great, and you want to have more than one tool in your toolbox because no matter how great one trauma treatment is, there's always going to be somebody where you hit a wall and you want to have other options. And so all our therapists are trained in EMDR, progressive counting, and flash. And that seems to be sufficient. It's the best of the research supported methods that are efficient, effective, and well tolerated. I mean, there are other research supported methods out there, but I think these are the best. So that's what we use. And it's important to us to have the full repertoire so that we can use what we need. Another way that we have evolved our practice is in the intake procedure. Intake is really high stakes because you don't want to turn away people that you could be helping. I mean, that's why we're here, right? We want to help people that need help. So you don't want to turn people away. And you don't want to take people, you don't want to accept people for treatment where it's going to go bad. For example, you don't want to be having somebody blocking out a week, taking time off from work, arranging childcare, and at 11 o'clock on Monday morning, you say, you know what? Now that I know you better, I don't think this is going to work out. Because what are they supposed to do? They just took a week off from work. And what are you supposed to do with your week? You just blocked out the
Right.
week for them. You can't get
Right.
other clients, on an
Right.
hour's notice. So you want to maximize your true positives and your true negatives so that you can accept everybody that you can help, but screen out or at least defer people where it's not going to work out. Maybe. So again, I'm not saying cherry pick and take only the unicorn clients who are going to be
Right.
super easy.
Right.
Um, that's very nice, but we do take a lot of really highly distressed clients, people who are trauma disabled, people with complex PTSD, etc. But we've gotten really good at our screening. The head of our intake department took the adult attachment interview training. I think it's like a 2-week training or something. I mean, she's just so smart. That's Elizabeth Davis. I don't know if you know her. She's
She's
just so
awesome. Yes.
smart about attachment and dissociation stuff. And so she's really refined our intake interview um, to help us get better at maximizing the true positives and the true negatives. Because if you get somebody who's highly dissociative and who hasn't done the prep work to be ready to do EMDR, it just, they come, you got to be doing the ego state work and the stabilization stuff. After about 2 days, you've really done all you can do. They're not ready for the trauma healing yet. They're upset because they didn't get what they came for.
Yeah.
Now they're your client because they bonded to you and you're responsible, and they're having crises and you've got to somehow connect with them even while you're trying to do
Right.
other things. It's just a mess. And um, we've gotten better at identifying those people and saying, yeah, we think an intensive will be great for you, but not right now. There's things you've got to achieve to get to the
And
point where that's
then we
going to
can
be
do that.
appropriate. Right. Um, then there's other people who we can accept, but we want to make sure that they have support in place. And so, like, if somebody comes to us off the street and we think, yeah, they can do an intensive, it's going to be great for them, but they're going to need a lot of support afterwards that we're not able to provide because, I got another intensive next week or I'm doing a
Right.
training or whatever. And so we'll tell them, look, you're a good candidate for this, but it's important for you to have a regular therapist. So when you've found a therapist and you've been meeting with them for 2 months, come back and we'll do an intensive with you because then you'll have
Right.
your support thing in place. So we've gotten a lot better at our intake. In terms of the sort of the meat of the intensive itself, other than adding Flash, I'd say, I mean, the system we're using, we've been using for quite a while, and it's just really good. So, there's a little fine tuning, but it's basically the same system.
I like the way you said that it works for you because you can get in and focus on things, and it's a great way to work.
Mhm,
I find that too. I love them.
mhm.
Um, is there anything else you discovered about yourself along the way of doing intensives?
Well, I knew that about myself. I mean, ping pong on a 0 to 10 scale where 10 is love, 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 and 0 is indifferent. I'm at about a 5 on ping pong. You get me started on ping pong, I'll play till 2 in the morning.
Right?
That's just how I am, you know? Um, and, we've had people on our staff who were really good at intensives. I could refer them to clients and be really confident. And they'll come to me after a year or two and say, this just isn't my thing.
Hmm.
It's just doesn't suit my personality. And I think I just want to do those little bites in the hour per week.
Hmm.
And they still do. They pick up an intensive every couple months and do a little burst of it, but it's just not doesn't suit their temperament.
Right.
So yeah, I already knew that about myself. And what we find now, the other thing is I don't do intensives every week. I do like to dig in on things, but I also like variety. I mean, being a psychologist is a blast. Um, there's so, and, other mental health professionals, I think it's similar. There's so many things that you get to do with your degree.
Mhm.
And so we do some research. I'm doing quite a lot of training lately, a little consultation. I do a lot of mentoring of our staff as they're, becoming trauma therapists. And then later on, as they're becoming consultants and trainers. And so I love the variety. When we get new therapists, we get people coming in on training fellowships. They're not even licensed yet. And we give them we have 22 days of training in the first year.
What a blessing they get.
22 days plus mountains of supervision, group and individual
Yeah.
supervision. I mean, it's just, I don't think there's anything like it in the world. And so that first year, they're doing 3 or 4 intensives a month. They're
Yeah.
really getting it. And by the second year, we have a conversation. I say, all right, what else do you want to do? Because very few people want to do a new intensive every week. Every once in a while, somebody does. We had somebody who was just like, I'm good. I'm in a groove. Leave me alone. And she was fine. It was just, but we find that most of our people need a change of pace. And so we'll get somebody on the intake team, we'll get somebody else onto a trainer track where they start assisting
Mm.
with trainings and work towards becoming a trainer. Um, we have somebody now working on marketing, you know.
Oh, nice.
Um, and so in our shop, we just sort of, there's a lot to do.
There
And so
is.
we try to find something that's for you for a change of pace. So maybe you're only doing 2 or 3 intensives a month instead of 3 or 4, and you're still doing something else that's contributing to our organization, that's helping you move forward in your own professional development. That's how we do it
That's
because we would like
excellent.
to. I mean, we don't have to keep everybody. If somebody stays with us for a year or two and then goes off and does their own thing, I'm thrilled. We're getting talent and
Just
skill out of
spreading
them
the
as well.
word.
Yeah. But I love it when people stay too. And so we try to find ways that they can continue to contribute, continue to develop, and not get burned out because most people can't do an intensive every week, not for too long.
And you just made me think of Santa's workshop where you've got all these different things that they can do.
Right.
Um, and you mentioned marketing because that was a thing about how do you get this out in the world?
Right.
How do you do that? How do you let people know
Right.
about it?
Well, a couple of years ago, I said SEO, and that was true a couple of years ago. Now it's not
What is it
because
now?
a couple of years ago, there was us and a handful of other people doing intensives. Now there are hundreds, all with a website, all doing SEO. So it's an arms race where the only people who win are the arms dealers. You can't you can't get a reliable stream of clients with a website anymore. A couple of years ago you could, right? And so what's the next frontier? And that's a good question. So you go to your local Department of Children and Family Services, and you find out what they're doing with their foster kids, and would this be a better thing to do with it? You go to your local rehab from, post-release from jail and from prison. What are they doing, and could this be part of it? You go to your local college and you say, I mean, colleges are dying right and left right now. They are. And they also have high dropout rates. They really need students to stay afloat. And a good percentage of the students are dropping out for mental health issues. There are other reasons too, but a big reason is mental health. This is low hanging fruit. So, we're starting to market to college counseling centers saying, hey, you want to keep your
Here we
students
are.
in school and keep your college going. It's good for everybody. Here's a way we can, fix them up and get them back on track without them having to drop out. So, and then there's grants, write a grant for victims of crime or whatever. I mean, there's lawyers and doctors. I mean, they're working with people that, let's just take lawyers, right? They've got people that they're trying to get, recover some compensation for accidents or wrongful deaths or this or that. There's a lot of trauma healing that needs to be done there, and there's money for it. So they should know about you, you know? And then lawyers also have clients who are in business deals or divorcing, and the clients are not acting rationally. They're not acting in their own best interest because they're so upset and so emotional. Those lawyers should know about you, because if you can just do an intensive with them and these people can get through a lot of their pain, they're going to be much better clients for those lawyers, and they're going to get much more of what they really deserve, right? So then there's doctors, chiropractors, physical therapists, all these people who are interacting with people who had car crashes and workplace accidents, right? So until insurance companies routinely cover intensives, marketing is about developing or tapping your existing relationships with people like this, who should know about you. And there's not one. I mean, 2 years ago it was just make a good website, do SEO, boom. Yeah, and then everybody did that. It's not the right thing anyway. I mean, you have to do it, but it's not going to be enough.
It's not
So
the be all end all anymore.
right. And so it's a rapidly evolving thing. And it's going to be a scramble for clients, actually, unless any individual therapist develops a good relationship with a good referral source, like the kind, the attorneys or the doctors or whatever, or a public agency that, has a pot of money, they got a bunch of juvenile delinquents on their hand, and this seems like a good idea, you divert them from residential, right? So you either find or develop a relationship where there is a referral stream and a funding source. That's pretty much what to do now until insurance covers it, and then we're back to a different way of marketing, right?
Right?
But we're in this transition phase now where it's become very popular, but it's not covered by insurance yet.
The good part, bad part. So when you think about all these brand new therapists who, well, not brand new therapists, but perhaps new to intensives
New to intensives, yeah.
therapists who are just getting started with doing that work, what do you think is something you'd really want them to know? What are the words of
Well,
wisdom?
I have a couple of opposite things to say here. One is you actually already know how to do this, right? Your existing skills are actually sufficient. You already know. It's just, doing things in a different order, in a different format, but you already have the skills. And now I'm going to say something opposite. Come to our week-long training and get the skills. Because we actually teach, as we actually teach a very systematic, efficient approach. And people always say, wow, I didn't learn a lot of this stuff in my EMDR training. Because every training provider has their own points of emphasis and whatever. And we do have a very efficient, concise, thorough system. And so, I know this is sort of advertising, but I really believe in what we're doing. And the people who just finished our course were like, wow, I feel much more capable now because there's a lot of stuff I didn't have before, and this is going to enable me to do a good job. So I really believe both things at once, even though they're
Mhm.
contradictory. Yeah, that people really do pretty much have the skills. And I know, like, one of the reasons I went to graduate school, well, one of the reasons I got my doctorate, I already had a master's. I was already doing therapy. I felt like I was really good. But I said to myself, you know what? I want to know what there is to know. I want to know what other people are learning who have that credential. I just want to, whatever there is out there, I want to make sure I have that. And it
Mhm.
mattered. It mattered a lot. Um, and so that's kind of, what I said to myself. I'm already a good therapist. I'm already happy with what I'm doing, but I want to make sure I know what there is to know. And so that's kind of what I would say to somebody else is, you already can probably do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
You have the skills, and I would encourage you to come to our week-long training and really learn what there is to know. Um, because, we've been doing it for, I don't know, 15 years now. We've really worked things out. It's been researched. Um, and I also wouldn't say that we're the only ones that know everything, um, because there's a lot of people putting out trainings now, and they're probably teaching some stuff that we don't teach, right? So, but those are the things I would say is you already have what it takes. You already probably know what to do, and you should
And
learn what there is to know. Yeah.
right. And you've talked a little bit about the kind of things you do at your institutes. And you offer trainings and intensives and PC and EMDR and
Right.
Flash.
Right.
And you also offer a certificate program for trauma therapists. Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to promote or share or talk about that you've got coming up?
Nah. Um, well, I am putting together a book on how to do intensives. It's going to go with our class. And it really
Perfect.
just teaches our particular system. It doesn't start from scratch. It assumes you're already knowing EMDR or whatever, and have those skills. Um, but I probably shouldn't say that since it's not ready yet, but it is
Well,
something I'm
it's
working on.
coming. We're looking at coming
Yeah.
attractions, right?
Yeah. And it's just a great time in history is really what I want to say. Um, for the first time in history, in human history, we're able to say, oh, you're traumatized? If you do the work, you can reliably and efficiently heal and come out stronger than before. Never before in history have we been able to say that. I mean, there's always been healing if
Yeah.
you stumbled into a good healing experience. But until EMDR, we were never able to say that, sort of, that it's reliable and systematic and efficient. And so that was a great advance in human history. And that advance has led to other advances like the flash technique, where it's kind of the same kind of advance, but even the next step sometimes a little faster, a little easier, and still thorough. And I believe that intensives are another such advance, which is now you can get it done, get a year's worth done in a week. It's extraordinary. And so it's just a great time to be us and to be part of this evolution in the sort of the methodology of psychotherapy and what that means for how we're able to help people live their lives.
That's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I don't think how you could possibly top that as a wrapper upper kind of close to this wonderful conversation. So it's been really
Yeah.
fun to talk to you, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. You got to find the button now, right?
I know, right?